former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, Newt Gingrich. He has a best-selling book out now, and I think really the definitive book on the success of the president in a little over 500 days and the remaining challenges, not the least of which is fake news. And it's called The Truth About Our Nation's Great Comeback, Trump's America. Mr. Speaker, welcome to Singapore. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing great. Now I want to tell you, I've been doing Fox TV today, and your interview with the president is just tremendous. I mean, they've had little segments of it on. And I remember when you first said to me, you know, you were thinking maybe you would go down to Singapore. What a great decision. And I think that you're there at a moment of just extraordinary history.
You know, I saw the possibility. You saw the possibility. One of the things, I see a lot of parallels with Reagan. Evil empire, trust but verify, peace through strength, tear down this wall, fire versus fire and fury, little rocket man, my button's bigger than yours and mine works. And Reagan, through the strength against the Soviet Union, followed up by a military buildup, Trump by a show of military force and by using economic sanctions. In both cases, the results far exceeding expectations. People that, in the case of Reagan and in the case of Trump, you have predictions in both cases by the media they would start nuclear wars. And now we have more hope than we've ever had in the Korean Peninsula, as we never thought the Berlin Wall would come tumbling down and reunification would take place, and it did.
I think that's right. I mean, I just did my newsletter that goes at Gingrich Productions. It'll be on foxnews.com tomorrow. And what struck me watching all this is this is to put Trump in context. None of us thought in 14 he'd run. Almost no one thought in 15 he'd be the nominee. Almost no one thought at this stage in 16 he'd win the presidency. Last year at this stage they thought he couldn't get anything through the Congress, and they were discounting like crazy getting a tax bill through. Now you got huge economic growth. He is the president. He has assembled a very tough national security team, and we're seeing things that Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama were incapable of achieving. I mean, this is what I watched today. My dad served in Korea in '53, and I've had a long interest in North Korea. And what I watched today was historic and, frankly, unbelievable. You could never invent.
I mean, that's really the thing. And, you know what was interesting for me is I don't go to these press conferences. And the president had said he didn't have any sleep for 25 hours. And it might have been one of his best press conferences ever. I thought it was so good I put it up on Hannity.com. By the way, it's right next to your book. And people can just click on it because
that's a great privilege for me.
Listen, I don't promote Amazon.com pretty much for anybody but you because it's where a lot of people buy books. But you know,
you're sitting there. Look, you're sitting there in Singapore in the middle of history that the rest of your life you'll be able to say, I was here at a moment when the world turned in a decisive way, and I knew the guy who did it. That's pretty remarkable.
Well, listen, I have been blessed. Every once in a while, in my more objective moments, when I can finally slow down for a few minutes and get perspective, I literally think I have no idea how I went on this crazy, career ride, because I experienced history with you too by emceeing the night that you became speaker. And one of the points you make in the book is really three huge, if you will, moments of modern day conservatism. Reagan was one. You and the contract were two, and Donald Trump, although nobody sees it yet, is three.
Yeah, and I think, look, even bigger than that, and your analogy with Reagan's exactly right. Reagan, because Margaret Thatcher frankly coached him and said she had met with Gorbachev, and she said, I think we can work with him, unlike the preceding three dictators who had all died in office. And Reagan had never met with any of them. And Reagan understood the importance of creating a personal relationship. And I talked to George Shultz, who had been Secretary of State at the time, and Shultz said, and this is his version, that he told the senior staff, we have to let President Reagan meet one-on-one with Gorbachev. And they were all said, oh, my God, you can't do that. It'll be too dangerous. He said, look, he's been studying Gorbachev. He knows what he believes. He'll take him to the cleaners. Well, I think that 30-minute meeting that started this whole process with only the two principals and the interpreter was extraordinarily important, because what's happening here, and I don't think people get this yet, what's happening here is they're beginning to unlock a process that process will open up North Korea. Now, we don't know how exactly it's going to go. There's going to be a lot of zigzags, et cetera. But I do know that Mike Pompeo graduated first at West Point, graduated very high at Harvard Law, is very tough, and he's the lead negotiator for the details. So I'm pretty confident that we're going to see some action that will be very exciting, and that just think about this from the standpoint of the North Korean people. They actually saw their leader in a modern city. I mean, the impact of Singapore, the wealth of Singapore, the modernity of Singapore compared to what it's been like in North Korea, that had to be a breathtaking change. And everybody who came down with him found themselves suddenly in a world where they're going, wait a second, why can't we be like that? And that was a big part of what led to the collapse of the Soviet Empire, was when people would go out and realize how backwards they were, how much it didn't work, and they would show up and say, hey, it's time for real change.
It's very interesting, and you got to ask yourself, and a lot of this, I think, was missed in the media, because like they said Reagan would start World War III, the California Cowboy. You remember this. You were there. You knew Reagan. And he'd start a nuclear holocaust. It's almost the same kind of predictions. And I was making this point on the program yesterday, is that, and I quote you often about what happened at 10 p.m. election night, November 2016, is there was this sort of mass psychosis that has taken place in terms of both the media and the Democrats. Nobody thought this can happen. They've been wrong about Trump every single step of the way. They never thought he'd win the primary. They never thought he'd win the election. They never thought that he would follow through on promise after promise after promise, from ending burdensome regulation, pulling out of the Iranian deal, meeting with all these foreign leaders, like at a speed, we called it the speed of Trump. I think you defined that. And then here we are. Now, it's not done. The hard work begins, as Mike Pompeo said, but to think that we have the North Korean dictator that stopped firing missiles over Japan, threatening the world, crossing the DMZ, releasing hostages, already dismantling a nuclear test site, and in a joint communique, if you will, is willing to talk about the denuclearization of the entire peninsula. That is a spectacular development for the world, and I would think everybody would be happy, but apparently some are not.
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch, because again, I said earlier today, right after this happened, I said, let's not get euphoric. This is the beginning of a process. We're not going to be guaranteed success tomorrow evening. But I think it is fair to say that the steps that they've taken, the very idea that you could get Kim Jong-un to leave North Korea, go to Singapore, have this kind of a session, meet with the open press, set the stage now for the next round of having Americans in North Korea, which will truly be historic. And I think these things are just dramatically more important than people realize. And I think that given the long period of difficulty in Korea, this has got to be very, very hopeful. And I do want to make one point, Sean, that I think is people keep missing. We can afford to denuclearize South Korea because we have ballistic missiles in Montana that can reach North Korea in 29 minutes. We have missiles sitting on Trident submarines. We have capability in our nuclear aircraft carriers, and we have B-2 bombers sitting in Guam. So we can say cheerfully, you get rid of your nukes. We don't need to have any nukes in South Korea. But by the way, if you ever try to cross the border militarily, we'll be back in 30 minutes.
Well, I think that's an important point, too. I don't even think it was a concession for the president to say, all right, now that we have crossed this barrier, now, okay, we're not going to have joint defense exercises with South Korea because, number one, it costs a fortune, and number two, do we really need to, because now we're making all this progress. I don't think we can discuss all of this, and if we're going to make Reagan comparisons, and I'd be the first to say they were very different personalities. You knew them both. You know Trump. You knew Reagan well. But the fact that there's no cargo planes full of cash, there's no bribery with energy subsidies, there's no false promises here, and that there's no movement at all about what is the fundamental goal, which is the complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization. That is key, and anything short of that is just not going to be acceptable to the president. And he already canceled one meeting. I think he would walk away in 4 seconds or less.
Look, one of the things people need to remember about Donald J. Trump is he spent his entire lifetime becoming a billionaire because he knows how to read contracts and he knows how to figure out whether or not you're performing. And if they end up not performing, he'll do what he has to, but he doesn't want to. I mean, the way he has turned in terms of tone is really important because he is saying to Kim Jong-un, look, if you'll be nice, I'll be nice. If you'll cooperate, I'll cooperate. But just remember, tomorrow morning we'll still be the most powerful nation in the world. We still have all the sanctions on. And we're only going to take steps one by one. And by the way, today, as you know, because you're there, the North Koreans announced they were dismantling their missile test site for their rockets. So we say we won't hold a military exercise this year. They dismantle their missile test site. That's progress. That's a step down the road in a way that is historic.
800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. We'll come back with former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, his brand new book out. It's up on Hannity.com, Amazon.com, bookstores everywhere. It's called Trump's America, the truth about our nation's great comeback. All right, as we continue, Sean Hannity Show, we are in Singapore. We're live. Glad you're with us. 12-hour time difference. We continue with former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, Fox News contributors. Brand new book is out. It's called Trump's America, the truth about our nation's great comeback. It's written in two parts. One, the president's success that nobody, it seems, besides me in the media and others in talk radio and a few of us at Fox talk about, and also the challenges that the president faces going forward, the fake news media, etc. With all of this happening, every economic statistic now becoming a record. It's almost like a record a day, record low unemployment for so many states, so many different groups, Hispanic Americans, African Americans, women in the workplace, and now this. What is the impact? Is it too early to tell the impact as it relates to 2018?
Well, I mean, look, I think, first of all, on the economic side, as you point out, we are now growing at more than twice the rate we were under Obama. We have the lowest black unemployment in American history. Things are getting better every month. We just had a new report out today about confidence among small business owners who are hiring more people, raising wages. So all of that's going to help, and all that makes Republicans very competitive this fall. The other thing, though, is the change in stature. I mean, it's going to be almost impossible for people to not recognize that President Trump is a remarkable leader who has actually done more to earn a Nobel Prize than Barack Obama did in 8 years, despite his having gotten one the first couple of months he was president, and that Trump is a serious man. I mean, you can't look at what just happened and not be just struck with how truly serious he is and how much he's accomplishing in a way that very few people could have.
Mr. Speaker, congrats on the book, another big New York Times bestseller, Trump's America, the truth about our nation's great comeback. Thank you for being with us.